word meal for today. It's a great pleasure having you all here. How did that day go? I hope we all had a wonderful and a beautiful Sunday, and I hope we all went to church. You're welcome to today's Bible study. We'll be taking our reading. We'll be studying Genesis chapter 18 today. Before we go ahead, let's say a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight with gratitude in our hearts. We thank you for your tender mercies. We thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for food, clothing, shelter. We thank you for even bringing us to today's Bible study. As we study your word, may your spirit be present in our midst. May your spirit carry your word deep into our hearts. May your word be planted in our hearts, that it will take root and bear forth fruit, that our lives will be transformed. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. Hi, welcome to all who have joined the live. It's great having you. I apologize for my absence yesterday. It was unavoidable. It was due to circumstances beyond my control. I really would have loved to be here, but it just wasn't possible. I apologize for my absence. So we'll continue from Genesis chapter 18. I'll take the reading. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on, for therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf, tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. And the men rose up from thence, and looked towards Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him that he will command his children and his household after him. And they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he had spoken of him. And the Lord said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence, and went towards Sodom. But Abraham stood yet before the Lord. And Abraham drew near, and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place, for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked. That be far from thee. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for the lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. And he spake unto him yet again and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for 40's sake. And he said unto him, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall be 30, there shall 30 be found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet for this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham. And Abraham returned unto his place. May the Lord bless his reading in Jesus' name. Welcome to all who have joined the live. It's great having you here. If you're joining us for the very first time, this is Word Meal, a Bible study channel. Here we study the Holy Bible and we get the message the Lord has for us in each chapter. We're currently studying the Old Testament and we're in the book of Genesis. I hope you'll stay on with us and let's study God's Word together. You're welcome. This is quite, we've just read Genesis chapter 18 and it's quite an interesting chapter. Okay, so on a good day, Abraham was sitting outside, okay, was sitting in the tent door, and then he looked up and he saw 3 men standing by and standing close to his tent. And so what he did was he ran to them. Okay, verse 2 says, and when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground. Verse 3, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Now, Abraham was a man who was spiritually sensitive. Okay, and so he was able to recognize that these were not ordinary men. And so when he saw them, immediately he rushed out. Now, the Abraham we're talking about here was an old man, mind you. Okay, he was at this time he was 99 years old. So he was an old man, okay? He wasn't young. But when he saw these visitors, he jumped up from his seat, ran towards them. He met them. When he got to them, he fell on his feet, bowed himself to the ground. And he said, My Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. So this tells us that Abraham recognized who these men were. Okay? He recognized who these men were. Okay? He recognized who these men were. And the thing is, it's recorded here that there were 3 men. Okay? Now those 3 men was there were 2 angels and the Lord. Okay, there were 2 angels and the Lord. So those were the 3 men that Abraham saw. And that is why when he got to them, he said, "My Lord." Okay, he was addressing the Lord himself. So if I found favor in your sight, okay, don't pass away. Okay, come in. Take water. Wash your feet with water. Eat something, okay, before you go on. And in verse 5, he said, "For therefore are ye come to your servant." For therefore are ye come to your servant. So we can see that they came in the how do I put this now? They came looking like regular men. They took on the appearance of regular men, but they were not. And Abraham was sensitive enough to know that to recognize who these people were. Okay. And after he pleaded with them to come in, wash their feet, eat something, rest themselves, they agreed. Okay. And so immediately he rushed to Sarah, his wife. He said, "Take 3 measures of meal, okay, of flour. Say, knead it, make cakes, okay, for this for our visitors." And he ran to his cattle, his animal, and then he took a young calf, okay, that was tender and good, and he gave it unto one of his servants to prepare it for the visitors. And then in verse 8 we are told that he took butter and milk and the calf which had been prepared, and he served them. Okay, he served them the food, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. So he served them, and he stood and watched them eat. This was a 99-year-old man, mind you. And it was not just that he was 99 years old. He was not a small person. He was not small in age. He was not small in wealth. He was not small in reputation either. Remember, he had gone to war with 4 kings and had won. So his reputation must have preceded him. Okay, so he was not small in reputation. He was not small in wealth. And he was not small in age. But we see how humble he was, because he knew who these people were. Okay, he knew who these people were. He could recognize them. He could recognize them. If we see an angel, I'm not talking about an angel who comes in his glory. Okay, because if an angel comes in his glory, you'll definitely know that this is an angel. But I'm talking about an angel who comes. Angels come like regular people. An angel can come driving a car, mind you. Okay, because when we think about angels, we think about them. We always think about them coming in their glory, coming with bright light and all of that, and it being so obvious that this is an angel. But sometimes angels come, looking, how do I put this? Angels come in the most unexpected ways, if I put it that way. An angel can come looking like a madman. An angel can come like a madman. Okay, an angel can appear to you driving a car and just come maybe to your place of business. I've heard a story. My mother-in-law told us of a story. The Lord gave, how do I put this now? Okay, there was a particular woman who was due for a certain kind of favor from God. Okay, and Lord gave her a prophecy through my mother in the Lord that an angel was going to come visit her at her shop. Okay, at her place of business. Okay. And so I don't know what she was expecting. Maybe she was expecting the angel to come with bright lights and all of that. But then someone came driving a car, a flashy car now. Okay. And then he came and he parked right in front of her store. So he was basically blocking her store. Okay. He was basically blocking her store. And then she got angry. She was furious and began to hurl insults at this man. You know, called him all sorts of names and asked him to take his car out of her premises. You know, and the man pleaded with her, said, "Let me just park. I won't be long. But let me just park this car here for a short while." The man, the angel, that was an angel actually. He actually came with what she needed. He came with what she needed, okay, to give to her. But she was not sensitive enough. And so he pleaded with her and pleaded with her, and she refused. My mother in the Lord, not my mother-in-law, my mother in the Lord, that's my spiritual mother. Okay, she's a prophet. So so the man kept pleading with her. He said, "Let me just park here. I'm not going to stay. I won't be staying long. I just want to do something. I just want to get something from around here." And she refused, you know, kept on hurling insults at him, asked him to take his car out of her premises and all of that. And so the man entered into his car and he drove off. And now, as soon as he entered into his car, my mother in the Lord called this woman and said, "An angel just came to your shop. But the Lord is telling me that you chased him away." And so the woman almost she almost went mad, you know. And she walked down to the road because when a car drives off, it wasn't a long time, and it was a long road. You could see far, you know, into the road. There wasn't any winding parts and all of that. It was straight, so you could see to a far distance. So the car had just driven off. Definitely she should have seen the car in the distance, and she ran to the road and looked in the distance, and she did not see the car. Okay, she couldn't see any car. It was like it was almost as if there had never been a car. The car just drove off, but she couldn't find it. She couldn't see it even in the distance. Okay, and that was how she missed her consignment. She missed that blessing. Now this is a true life story. It might sound fantastic, but it's true. Okay, it might sound fantastic, but it's true. That is why we need to be sensitive, because sometimes an angel might not come with flashing lights, you know, come like the angel Gabriel came to Mary and all of that. No, an angel could come like a mad person and just come to you and say, "Can I just get food? I'm hungry." Okay, and the way you treat that mad person will determine whether or not the Lord will release the blessing that he has for you at that point in time or not. Because what you do not know is that mad person is an angel. Okay, so angels are actually all around us, moving around us like regular people. But most times we do not know, because we expect, yes, angels come. There are times when angels will come in their glory. Okay, there are times when the angel, but angels mostly come in their glory when you're in the place of prayer. When you're yes, in the place of prayer, or maybe the Lord wants you to have an encounter. maybe to pass a message to you or something. Okay. But sometimes the Lord might want to test you. Okay. And have the angel come as a regular person. Now these two angels and the Lord came looking like regular people. But Abraham was sensitive, spiritually sensitive enough to know that this is the Lord. These are angels. And that is why we see the obeisance that he paid them. We see how humble he was. There was no atom of pride or haughtiness in him, because he knew, he recognized their superiority. Okay? And then, after he had served them food and they had eaten, they now asked, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And Abraham said, "She's in the tent." Okay. And then verse 10 says, "And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son." Now this was the Lord speaking now. Okay. It was the Lord speaking. So I will return unto you according to the time of life, and Sarah will have a son. Remember, the Lord had already said this in chapter 17. Okay. That chapter 7, verse 19 of chapter 17 said, "And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed." And this time Abraham laughed. And Abraham laughed. But this time around, the Lord said that he will return according to the time of life. At that time, the next year, and that Sarah would have had a son at that time. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, because she was behind the tent door. She was seeing witnessing all that happened, and she was hearing. Okay? And she laughed. She laughed. Okay. I remember telling us the last time when we studied chapter 17, when Abraham laughed, I said that was because Sarah had been written off. Even her husband did not believe. Even her husband had written her off. And of course, you can't really blame him. Okay. But this time around, it was Sarah herself that laughed, because she herself had written herself off. Okay. She had written herself off. And of course, you can't really blame her, because verse 11 says, "Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women." So, in other words, Abraham and Sarah were old. Of course, Abraham was 99, Sarah was 89. They were old. Say, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner. She was no longer menstruating. So how you have to be a woman has to be menstruating in order to have the potential to bear children. But she was a menopausal woman. She had hit menopause. There was no hope. All hope was lost. Okay, according to man's reasoning, according to man's wisdom, all hope was lost. How does a menopausal woman get pregnant and give birth? Okay. So Abraham and Sarah were well old and well stricken in age. Verse 12 says, "Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? I'm already an old woman." How it's not possible. At that age, I don't think she was even thinking about sex. I don't think at that age she was even still, sexually active. And then how then does she want to get pregnant? She was she had she was deep into menopause, and she was old and frail. So she laughed within herself because it sounded impossible. It sounded impossible. Okay, now this reminds me of the story. When we get to the book of Ezekiel, we'll come to study, read about it, where the Lord took the prophet in the spirit, prophet Ezekiel in the spirit, to a valley of dry bones, and the Lord asked Ezekiel, "Can these bones live again? Can these bones live again?" They were dry bones. Dry bones, human bones, but dry. They had been there years and years and years and years. They were dry, maybe even centuries old. And the Lord asked Ezekiel, "Can these bones live again?" And Ezekiel said, "Lord, I don't know. You know." And the Lord asked the prophet to prophesy. He said, "Speak to the bones." And the prophet did. And the bones, the Bible tells us that the bones, there was a shaking and a loud noise. And then these bones began to come together, bone onto bone. Okay, until sinew onto sinew. The bones began to locate their parts, began to come together, until they formed the complete skeleton, until each formed the complete, because the bones were a whole lots and lots of people, okay, humans. Okay, so each person's skeleton began to come together, bone onto bone, and all of that. After the bones had come together, flesh began to come together, began to form. Okay, flesh began to form, and until everything formed, until it became like a human being. But there was no life; they were lifeless. And then the Lord asked the prophet to prophesy again, and he did, and said the Lord sent the wind to come. Okay, and the Lord breathed into this bone, into this dead people. Okay, through the wind, using the wind, and they came alive and formed a great army. Now this was a vision. It was symbolic. It was symbolic, that to show that nothing is impossible with God. Nothing, even dry bones, can live again. So the story of Sarah reminds me, Sarah laughing, and saying, "I am so old, I am menopausal. How can I am no longer, I am not even sexually active anymore. And even if I were, I don't even have the potential to get pregnant. How will it happen?" Well, we see that nothing is impossible with God. Dry bones can live again. Dry bones can live again. And then the Lord asked Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh?" And Sarah, because she was scared, denied and said she did not laugh. Okay? And the Lord said, "You laughed." Okay? And then in verse 16, we're told that the men rose up from thence and looked towards Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. Now, one thing I want to point out here is this. Remember, I said earlier that sometimes the Lord can send an angel, okay, an angel that does not look that looks like a regular person, or looks worse than a regular person, maybe looks homeless or something. And the way you treat that angel will determine whether the Lord will release to you the blessings that he has for you at that time. Now, the Lord had already promised Abraham in chapter 17 Sarah will get pregnant, she will give birth to a son. However, what pulled, what finally pulled that blessing, what finally led to the manifestation of that pronouncement was the way Abraham received these 3 visitors of his. Imagine if Abraham had seen them and had just snubbed them, just thrown his face the other way and allowed them go on their way. First of all, this perhaps it would have taken a longer time for the manifestation of this pronouncement. Perhaps it would have taken a longer time. But he invited them in. He hosted them beautifully. He was a hospitable man. Okay, and so right there and then the Lord said, by this time next year, Sarah will have a child. Okay? And then there's another advantage. There's also another advantage that came out of Abraham's reception of these visitors, and we'll find that out as we go further. Okay? So after the Lord had told Sarah, you will have a child, okay, and she had laughed and all of that, the men rose up and they faced Sodom. That was their destination. And guess who lived in Sodom? Lot, Abraham's nephew. And then in verse 17 we're told, and the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Shall I hide